Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nora Muhammad. I want to thank you so much for joining me for episode 261 of the podcast. And this episode is titled Using Black History to Prepare a Black Future. And it is now Black History Month, formerly Negro History Week. And for those who may not know the history of Black History Month or African American History Month, however we want to call it today, it started with Carter G. Woodson in 1926, in which he was a historian and a journalist, and he felt it appropriate rather, to recognize the history and accomplishments of Black people. And in doing so, he believed that it would help with advancement and progress amongst Black people, as well as personal esteem and confidence that Black people had in themselves and in our quote race in general. And so he came with the idea of having a Negro History Week that would be dedicated to helping our people know the history of of ourselves and our contributions. And in 1976, it went from Negro History Week into a Negro History Month. And of course, the language that we use has taken many iterations, and now we are, I believe, it's popularly known as African American History Month. Although I still use the term Black, and so Black History Month is upon us, and this episode is being released on the second day of Black History Month in 2026, February 2nd. And look, we only have 26 days left in the month, and let's make sure that as we have this month to recognize the history and accomplishments of our people in this nation and beyond, that we don't waste time with the parts of the observance of Black History Month that comes with, I'll say, uh, not substantive or things that are just symbolic. And this is something that I've talked about on this podcast many times, in ensuring that as we have moments of recognition or celebration, that we extract the substance from it, or as we are, working within our various areas and fields, whether that's politically, socially, educationally, and trying to make impacts, that we focus on that which is substantive and not just the symbolic, although symbolism and symbols can paint a way, or give us guidance or point us in a direction. But if we are just left with the symbols, then we fail to extract the substance. And so I hope that as the leaders that you are who listen or watch this podcast, the influential people that you are, the impactful people that you are, who are absorbing the Nora Speaks podcast, that as you engage with our community in all the ways that you do, that you and others like you really push what is substantive. And so in this episode 261 of the podcast, I do want to talk about just that, using Black History Month, and studying Black history, uh, in researching it and using it as a way to create a Black future. And if I think about, the recognition or celebration or the observance of Black History Month, since I've been a child, I can think about some of those figures that were on the walls in the classroom, right? Um, I think about, Jesse Owens and um, I think about, Paul Robeson and, um, you know, all of the athletes or the entertainers, Louis Armstrong and his photo being on the walls. And we've had some giants in our people coming down through the annals of time. And I don't remember learning what was so substantive about these people, aside from their feats on the racetrack, or their accomplishments in music. But what did they accomplish socially or politically, economically for our people? And to a great extent, our history in America is often told as slaves who accomplished something that advanced the needs of our former slave masters. But what has our ingenuity, our genius, our education, what has it done for us collectively as a people? And I think that's what we have to be considerate of, because certainly we are a bright, talented people, and there's genius born of our genes. However, the accomplishments and the momentum has been to forge a way forward for this nation. But when we look at our people and our standings today, there is a lot that should be desired as we reflect on our position socially, our position economically, our position politically, for that matter, our position educationally, whether it's home ownership. I mean, thinking about the ability for our people to get degrees and advanced degrees, that's has its place and that may deserve some recognition. But what have our advanced degrees gained for us? What has that done for us? Um, you know, so I mentioned home ownership, and you don't need an advanced degree to own a home. But let's look at the rates of home ownership, right? Which has been a means for, Americans to establish wealth, right? And so many of us may be first time home buyers, and we look at the economy today, and it's not necessarily favorable for first time home buyers, right? We think about institutions, and I know that HBCUs, they have their place, and many are educated there, or they're educated in PWIs, predominantly white institutions. But regardless of where we are educated, where we are trained, how has our education and training impacting the progression of our people, right? Looking at our health outcomes, right? We say that Black women are the most educated group of people in the US, and look at our health outcomes and how has our educational advancements or entitlements benefited our collective health outcomes as Black women and as a community. So if we are examining Black history during this month of February, let's consider how this study of Black history is going to create a Black future, or what Black future. I think about, as we just observed King Day, the birth anniversary of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and we look back in time to, review or to study or to interrogate his methods, to listen to his speeches and read his writings, and others who are his contemporaries, and in consideration of that, have those methods, have the ideology, the theology, have those practices brought us any advancements that are substantial that we can reflect on today and be grateful for. Certainly, Dr. King was somebody who, worked tirelessly, who sacrificed a great deal. And we get the, you know, King speech of "I have a dream," so often. Um, and here we are 63 years later, and some of what Dr. King was talking about in that speech, which was primarily a recognition of the civil rights of the Negro, of the colored man, as we were called, colored. He was at that time trying to advance the acknowledgement of our civil rights at a time when our human rights were not acknowledged. And so, if we are still in the condition of looking to have our civil rights recognized by those who are in authority and leadership, and whether that's leadership in the classroom, whether that's leadership in the White House, leadership in the State House, leadership within law enforcement, if we are still, you know, working within the political process to get the recognition of civil rights, how has those efforts, or that look back in time in a study of Black history, how has that impacted us today if we are still at the table asking for our civil rights to be recognized? And so that speech 63 years ago is one that I think Dr. King realized in 1968. During those speeches and sermons, I think he recognized, as he was quoted as saying, that he believes that he's, integrating his people into a burning house when we're looking, or when he was examining the state of the U.S. at that time. And so, in fact, I think we should advance ourselves from the speech of I Have a Dream to his electric messaging in 1968, where he was urging us to unite ourselves and support our institutions, build a Black economy, and engage in, as he called it, a very dangerously unselfish unity. Now, I think that is what we should be focusing on as we are striving, and I hope that we are striving collectively as a people to create a Black future that is different than our present reality today, or the condition that we were looking to advance from during King's I Have a Dream speech. So our future should not look like our past, is what I'm trying to say. And we've heard the language of examining or knowing our history, or we are going to be doomed to repeat it. And we see this cycle, and the saying that if you do the same thing trying to establish a different outcome is insanity. So we have to do something different today. So as we are taking this month of February to examine the history of Black people in this nation and around the world, I would encourage us to do a critical analysis of it. And as we are entitled and should be fighting for an acknowledgement of our civil and our human rights, that we should look at ourselves and determine, are we doing our part to acknowledge our civil and human rights? And what do I mean by that? I mean taking action collectively, like Dr. King talked about, having a dangerous unselfishness, and getting up off of a lazy idea that someone should be doing what we should be doing for ourselves, or waiting for someone else to stand up and get busy and get to work. That we should acknowledge our humanity, that we should acknowledge the fact that we should have the ability to engage in the civil discourse, or engage in what others are engaging in within their community, meaning being able to set a course for themselves. We are waiting for others to set a course for ourselves, like we're waiting for someone else to set the table. No, you get in the kitchen, right? You prepare the meal, and then you set your own table. And we are doing ourselves and our future a disservice, waiting for someone else to set the table, prepare the meal, earn the money, buy the food, prepare the meal, and set the table, when we should be doing that for ourselves. So we need a critical analysis of our history, a thorough examination of it. And we can't expect others to give us the history. I mean, a couple years ago, the phrase critical race theory was, it was, we were inundated with it because we were recognizing the real retelling and recognition of our history being rewritten. We had, governors and state leaders talking about a history that just was a fantasy, right? We have to be able to tell American history, because Black history is American history, and we have to be able to talk about it in an unfiltered way. And but we can't rely on others to preserve our history and to tell our history. We know that there's a revisionist history. We know that just a few weeks ago, we were watching leaders take down information at federal buildings that talked about history in America that allegedly shined an unfavorable light on the history, but it's the history, right? You can't put sugar on crap and act as if it's sweet now. It's still crap, and if parts of American history is crappy, well, it is what it is, but we can't run from it. And if we're expecting others to give us a retelling of that, then we are simply foolish, because our past time here in this nation, we've always had to get it from ourselves. And so I don't understand the expectation today. Remember, Carter G. Woodson uh, develop a Negro History Week because he knew that we had to teach our people, right? And it wasn't a reliance on others. So we have to do this work ourselves and have a critical examination. We cannot accept an intellectual laziness today because we're distracted with social media, because we're distracted with CNN and Fox News and flatulence in the White House. You have to develop a maturity and look beyond these distractions and think about the real world implications of being uncurious intellectually and being lazy in exploration of our history, because we can go to AI and ask AI, what happened in 1963 or what happened in 1863. No, we have to do that ourselves, and we have to also direct our young people as they have, and we have such access to technology today and these modern advancements, but we can't let the modern advancements um, do the work for us, because we are now finding, curiosity is I mean, I think about when we look at the history of this nation and the curiosity that these inventors, these scientists, these engineers, these people, the those who led in the arts, and we look at what they were able to create, that we are still confounded by just their brilliance and their genius, in spite of Jim Crow, in spite of being enslaved people, and the brilliance that came out of their minds during a time where they were under a severity and harshness that we just can't conceptualize today. And look at what they created. They were curious, right? They weren't lulled to sleep with the pacifications of a modern technology in a modern world like we find ourselves today. So if we are looking to have a Black future that is different from our past, then we have to do a critical analysis. And so that is going to require something of us, in us exercising an intellect that is being dulled down because we have AI, because we have Instagram or all of the social media that distracts us. And these platforms, I use them, you use them, they have a place, but let us use them wisely, and let us understand that the place that they should occupy. It becomes sort of a town hall, um, where we are just coming together just to entertain each other, to kind of gossip, to see what's happening in other people's lives, to see what this basketball player is doing in their free time, to see, who this baseball player is dating, who this rapper is in a beef with. And it becomes a town hall for nothingness. But we can use these instruments as town halls of fact gathering, as a means to expand on the base that we already have developed on the ground, because we can't live on social media and expect a change in our day-to-day lives, in our outside of our homes or on our streets, right? They can be a mechanism to share information, to disseminate what needs to be shared, but we can't use them as a base. They can enhance the base, but the base should be on the grounds where we live and work and get educated every day. So as we are observing Black History Month in 2026, I encourage us to think critically, to challenge our children to do the critical work, to challenge ourselves to do the critical work and be an example for the generations coming behind us. We have to do the work so that our future is not a recreation of a past that we were trying to change at that time. We can't keep repeating the same cycles. And that is going to take some real digging in. That's going to take commitment. That's going to take the dangerous unselfishness that Dr. King talked about in his final remarks to us. And so let's follow the example that he set for us. The blueprint has already been given to us, supporting, establishing, and then supporting Black institutions, developing an economic base, and engaging in a dangerous unselfishness. That's going to require critical thinking. That's going to require some radical change and some radical work on our part. But I know we have the manpower to do it. The question is, do we have the will and the willpower to do it? I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Happy Black History Month to our people. Let's make this one count. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property. And to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. And what I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Nora Speaks. Look out for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, you can visit my website, noraspeaks.com. Or if you have a listener question, you can email me at nora@noraspeaks.com. Follow Nora Speaks on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Nora Speaks, or you can subscribe to the Nora Speaks YouTube channel. I will be sure to include links in the show notes. If Nora Speaks has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.